Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Steph and I'm obsessed with all things books. So today we are going to be doing my most anticipated video, and that is my John MARRS ranking. I have finally read the last John MARRS book that I had to read, which means that I have actually read all of his books now. So I've sort of been waiting until I've read them all before I do my total ranking video. And yes, I have even read Dead in the Water. I managed to get an arc on NetGalley of this one, and well, you're just gonna have to wait and see where I rank it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So John MARRS currently has 14 books published, if you include Dead in the Water, and I've actually DNF'd 2 of them. And trust me, I'm as surprised about this as you are. I would say that one of them is a hard DNF. I know that I'm not going to go back to this book, but the other one is more of a soft DNF. I have tried it a couple of times, but I do just think it might have just been wrong time for that book. But without further ado, let's get into it. So my first DNF by John MARRS is When You Disappeared. So this book follows a man who decides that he doesn't want to live anymore, and instead of taking his own life, he decides to just run away, and he runs away from his wife and his 3 young kids. Now, my problem with this book is that you get the wife's point of view as well, and he gives the wife absolutely no indication of where he's gone. He leaves his wallet, he leaves his phone, he doesn't leave her a note, he just disappears. And she's got 3 young kids who are like, "Where's dad gone?" And she's like, "I have no idea." And I just found it really difficult to read this book because I just disagreed with his actions so much, and I hated him so much. I will say that it does take a very talented writer to make you hate a character so much, and I think you're meant to hate him. I don't think you're meant to like him. But for whatever reason, I just found this book to be a little bit slower than other John MARRS books, and I think I tried reading this book about 3 times and I finally DNF'd it. I think I was at 50%, so I was actually quite through this book, but I just hated the main character so much that I just couldn't continue. My second DNF is one that is more of a soft DNF. I might go back to this book at some point, but at the moment I have no real desire to, and that is The Vacation. Now, this book is really long. I do think it's actually John MARRS' longest book, and for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into it. It's set in LA, and it's got loads of different characters, and I just sort of struggled to figure out who is who. Just not really one that I've ever found myself going back to, and yeah, sadly a DNF. However, don't you worry, it is all up from here, and this is the start of the 4 stars. Now, this is why John MARRS is one of my favourite authors of all time. The books that I have finished, I have not rated a single book lower than 4 stars. If you're not aware of John MARRS, his books are really split into 2 subgenres of thrillers. The first one is your typical psychological thrillers, and the second is sort of like a dystopian near future sort of thrillers, quite similar to Black Mirror. So if you're into Black Mirror, I think you would really enjoy these books. But if you're like me and I've never watched Black Mirror, I have still really enjoyed all of his dark future books as well. So let's get into the start of the 4-star books. So the first one is The Marriage Act, and The Marriage Act is one of his dystopian near future books, and this basically looks at if you are married, your marriage, you can opt into the Marriage Act and they will basically track your marriage. They'll listen in using Alexa type devices, and if they think that your marriage is struggling, they will send someone out to help your marriage. This book follows loads of different couples who opt into the Marriage Act, and yeah, some of it is pretty twisty and turny. For whatever reason, this book isn't at the top of like my favourites. I don't think about it all that often, but when I was reading it, I had a really good time. All of John MARRS' books has multiple POV, some of them more than other, and this one is one of the ones that has some of the most points of view. And that can seem a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but you kind of, if you read a big chunk of it at the start, you'll manage no problem. So The Marriage Act, not one of my favourites, but still a 4-star and one that I would highly recommend. We actually have 3 of John MARRS' near future books, all at 4 stars, so let's sort of group them together. So the next one I'm going to talk about is The Passengers. The Passengers basically looks at automated vehicles and what would happen if they get hacked. This follows 5 different points of view of people who are trapped in automated vehicles, and they're all set to collide with each other. The whole book is basically a ticking time bomb to when these cars are going to collide, and it's just so tense. You'll realise as I talk about all of John Marrs's books, they're all like very different to each other, and they've all got such interesting concepts that I've never seen any other author do before. They're not just sort of standard psychological thrillers, they've got something about them, and they've got things that you will remember about them. I haven't really done any research for this video whatsoever. I can just remember the plots for all the books off the top of my head. That maybe makes me sad, but it's just kind of the way it is. So again, similar to the Marriage with the Passengers, it was a really good read. I flew through it in no time at all, but it's just not one of the ones that I think of as my immediate favourite when I talk about John Marrs. The next 4-star book is actually the last book that I read by John Marrs, and that is The Minders. Now, The Minders is another one of his near future books. There is this group of people called the Hacking Collective, and they are featured in a lot of the books, but in this one in particular, they are hacking government's secret information, and then they're holding the government's ransom for millions and millions of pounds. The UK decides to take a different approach, and instead of leaving all of their information on computers that can be hacked, they basically put them into this little sort of chip, and they put it into the brains of 5 people. So those 5 people are called the Minders, and they basically hold all of the government secrets. Like I said, this is the last book that I've read by John Marrs, and again, I flew through it, really enjoyed it. Again, when I think of my favourite John Marrs, I just don't think this one's going to be a favourite, but still, 4-star read, really enjoyed and would highly recommend. And my last 4-star from John Marrs is one of the most infuriating characters that I've ever read in a book, and that is the Good Samaritan. If you haven't heard anything about this book before, it basically features this woman who works in a suicide hotline, and instead of helping people to not take their own life, she is encouraging people to take their own life. She's the most horrible human being I have ever read in a book, and I think that's why I rated it 4 stars, because I hated her. I just hated her so much. The whole way through, when you're reading it, you're just like, oh my god, you're such a horrible human being. Yeah, just infuriating. But still, a book that, again, I would recommend it. It's just not one of my favourites. Okay, now we're moving up to 4.5 stars. These are the ones that left me sitting there like, what on earth just happened? And ones that I would say are top tier thriller books. I have rated some 5 stars, so they're obviously my absolute favourites, but a 4.5 star read for me is still an incredible thriller book. And there's actually quite a few of these. So the first book I'm going to talk about in the 4.5 star tier is You Killed Me First. You Killed Me First is definitely a book that I never thought I'd see John Marrs writing, as it is basically like Desperate Housewives. The beginning of the book starts with a woman who is basically trapped in a bonfire, and you don't know who it is, and then all the way through the book you get 3 points of view and you still have no idea who is under this bonfire. I just found this book so gripping and totally different to anything that he's done before. It's 3 people who live on the same street, and you don't know how they know each other apart from the fact that they're neighbours, but you can just tell that there's something underlying there. And it's just, yeah, it's like juicy gossip, Desperate Housewives with a little bit of murder thrown in. It's really good. It was a really good read, and I highly recommend this one too. I recommend them all. I don't know why I keep saying I highly recommend it. I do recommend all of them. Next, we're going to talk about what I think is John Marrs's most underhyped book, and that is Her Last Move. This one is a police procedural thriller which features a guy who can like recognize faces. I can't remember what the term is. I think it's a super recognizer or something like that. But basically, like, if he has seen you in a crowd before, he will be able to be like, I recognize him. He's been in prison before. And it's wild. But this is actually a real thing. Like, people can actually just like recognize loads of faces. But again, this is quite different to like his normal psychological thrillers. It's a police procedural, and I really enjoyed this one, and I never see anyone talk about it. It is one of his older books, but I think this one is really underhyped, and one that I would really recommend that you have a look at if you haven't already read it. Next up in the 4.5-star tier, we have another one of the near future books, and that is The Family Experiment. The Family Experiment was actually the first arc I got of a John MARRS book, so this one does hold a bit of a special place in my heart. This book is set in a time where people are struggling to have kids and the price of IVF has gotten so high that your normal families can't afford it. So they have come up with a way that you can basically have a virtual reality baby. You stick your VR headset on and you basically have a baby in the virtual reality space. Again, this has a lot of points of view, so it is good if you sort of read a good few chapters for a start to sort of get into who everyone is. This one was so good. I remember flying through this in the space of like 2 days and just really highly recommend. Next, we have John MARRS' newest release, which is Dead in the Water. Dead in the Water follows Damon, who has a bit of trouble when he's out swimming in the sea and he has a near-death experience. He officially dies for 3 minutes, but his best friend is a paramedic and she manages to bring him back to life. When he was out cold, he's seen this young boy and he is convinced that he did something to hurt him. But everyone's like, there's no young boy, what are you talking about? Like, they don't understand what he's talking about at all. And in the days that follow, Damon keeps getting haunted by this young boy and he is convinced that he's done something to hurt him. This book has a character crossover that I did not see coming in a million years. And what I love about John MARRS books is a lot of them have got Easter eggs to like other books and you can kind of link them together, which I really enjoy. This one really shocked me actually because the concept of it wasn't my favourite when I heard it. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this one, but as per usual, I was completely blown away. Highly recommend. And this was the easiest 4.5 stars I've ever given a book. It was just so good. The last one in the 4.5 star tier is The Stranger in Our House. Again, this one really surprised me because I don't see a whole lot of people talk about it. Like I do, but not as much as some of his other books. And this one follows this old lady who's got dementia and her daughter looks after her. She's her carer. But there's this man who's turned up and he's trying to worm his way into her life. He starts by clearing out the garden for free and then the next day he's in making her dinner and trying to romance her. And her daughter is very much like, who is this guy? Is he just trying to like, you know, get my mum to sign over all her money because he has no idea, like she doesn't know who he is? But the twist in this book, like I could not believe it and did not see it coming a mile away. This one is just, this one holds like, it's just so good. It's just so good. And if you haven't read it, go and read it. Read them all. But that one, the twist, the midway twist in The Stranger in Our House is unbelievable. So good. He always gets me with his twists and that's why I love him. Right, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. We have finally made it to the 5-star books and I only have 3. This is how grippy I am with my 5 stars. My favourite author, and I only have 3 books I've rated 5 stars. But at least you know they're good books. Now, I've got 2 that are probably joint top, and then I've got another one the 3rd one's kind of sitting 3rd. So we'll talk about that one first. So the book that's in number 3 is Keep It in the Family. Keep It in the Family follow this young couple who buy a house and it needs torn apart and started again. It's extremely dated and it needs done up. So they are prepared for a renovation until one day they go up into the attic and what they find up there is just absolutely horrendous. They've basically bought a murder house. But the twists in this one, I did not see coming a mile away. I absolutely love this book. Definitely do think this is the darkest John MARRS book there is. And I would highly recommend check the trigger warnings for any of them, but in particular this one, because this one, I did not realise it was going to be as dark as it was. But it is one of my favourites for a reason because it's just so good. Like the twists and turns in this one, I sort of had an inkling of where it was going to go and then it got blown out of the water and it was like, yeah, okay, I was completely incorrect. And I love being incorrect when I'm reading a thriller book. There is nothing worse than reading a book and you guess the plot twist. Like I hate that. You will not get that with a John MARRS book, let me tell you. Next we have my joint 2 books and arguably probably his most popular books for good reason. Okay, so the first book that is joint top in my head is The One. The One is actually the first book in the Near Future series. So if you are interested in the sort of dystopian, near future Black Mirror sort of type books, I would definitely start with this one because this one is mentioned in just about all the other ones. The One is set in a world where you can take a mouth swab, send it away, and you will get a letter back saying who your true love is based on your DNA. Now, this sounds like a great idea for all of the single people out there. They'll be like, oh my god, that sounds great. But actually, people get matched up with people who they should not be with. For example, a serial killer gets matched up with a police officer, and, you know, a straight heterosexual man gets paired up with another straight heterosexual man, and they're like, wait, are we gay? Like, it's just wild, absolutely wild. And it's got short chapters, multiple POV, and it's just incredible. So What Lies Between Us follows a mother and daughter who live in the same house, but the mother is chained up in the attic. But not all is as it seems, and this one is just a wild, wild ride. I read this book such a long time ago. I really want to reread it and see if I would still give it 5 stars. I'm sure I would, but maybe that's something I do in 2026 is reread it. The first book I read by John MARRS was What Lies Between Us, and it still just holds a special place in my heart because this book changed thriller books for me. Like, I'd never read a book like it, and I'd never read twists like it. And I think that like, this book changed my rating system, and this book just changed the way that I look at thriller books, so I can never stop rating this as number 1. So The One and What Lies Between Us were the first books that I read by John MARRS. They still are my top 2 books by this author, and I really fancy doing a reread of them at some point just to see if I still love them as much as I think I do. I'm sure I will, but they just hold such a special place in my heart, and I would highly, highly recommend these 2 if you haven't read anything by John MARRS. They're a very good place to start. So if you have watched this whole video, thank you so much. I hope that it has provided a little bit of help of where to start with John MARRS books. Like I say, he is my favourite author of all time. I've only DNF'd 2 books, and I haven't got a book rated lower than 4 stars from his other ones. I just recommend them all, really. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I will have similar content coming very soon, and I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you next time.